What's up, everybody? I hope y'all are having a great day. My name's Anthony, and on today's video we will be doing another episode of Hobbies to get you better prepared. This one's going to be on archery. Alright, so just like the last episode where we talked about metal detecting, on this episode of Hobbies to get you better prepared, we are going to do a brief overview on all the different things that you need to know in order to get into this hobby. So I'm going to talk about the different types of archery, the reasons to get into it, and the tools you may need to get started. Now, when it comes down to the different types of archery, there really is only two these days, and that is going to be compound and traditional. Now, whenever we say compound, it more or less is talking about the pulleys or cams on the bow. What it means by compound is all of a sudden whenever you're pulling back, that weight, that draw weight when you're pulling gets harder and harder, and then it lets off. Because when the cams rotate, they get to a point where it's a let-off point. And there are pluses and minuses to that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. When we talk about things like traditional, we are talking about something like a normal longbow, recurve bow, or horse bow. Now, these days, there's about two main reasons why someone would want to get into archery, and that is going to be for hunting purposes or for recreational purposes. Yes, competition exists, but I don't think anyone watching this video is going to get into competition archery because I put a video on this. They're more likely going to get into this hobby if they want to go hunting or if they want to just have some fun. Now, long story short, I got into archery when I was about 11 or 12 years old when my aunt bought me one of those Lil Banshee bows. Probably cost her maybe $25, $30, no big deal. Probably had like a 15-pound pull, and I would be in the backyard for hours sitting there just shooting cans. Got my wheel spinning, and I really did enjoy doing it. However, I definitely kind of let off on it, and it fell off on the wayside as I started to grow up. But when I was in the military, I got back into archery because of hunting. I wanted to make sure I could go hunting, and the area that I had to do it in was bow only. So I had to learn how to shoot a bow so I could go hunting in this particular area, and that's what really got me into it. So I know what some of you may be thinking, wait a second, we're in the 21st century and you're still using archery to go hunting? Yes, absolutely. There's a reason why guns have not displaced bows in the hunting world. And there's quite a few advantages to having a bow, and I'm just going to go over a few of them. The main one is the season. Now, I can't speak for every single state out there, but in the state of South Carolina, especially the zone I'm in, Zone 2, you get about a month head start on hunting because they don't allow rifles until October 11th. Now, if you're in Zone 3 and 4, you can start shooting with a rifle, start hunting deer with a rifle on August 15th. But in my area, in my game Zone 2, I cannot start hunting until September 15th. And that is only archery season only. And then it's like October 1st through the 11th is primitive weapons, so a muzzleloader. But for the most part, you get an extra month because rifle season doesn't start here until October 11th. You get an extra month hunting if you are with a bow. So I don't know if y'all have been hunting before or who has been hunting, but you should know that whenever hunting season starts, it's like all the deer get together at like the dinner table and they're like, yo, did you hear a gunshot today? I heard a gunshot. It must be hunting season. Let's all go nocturnal. So it becomes very difficult once they all kind of know that hunting season started because they know it and they go nocturnal to where you're actually not allowed to hunt. So the earlier you can get out there, almost the better, because you're able to get maybe that big deer that you've had your eye on and they might not realize it's hunting season yet, and you can catch them as they're going to bed or waking up. Another plus is it's quiet. So where you may be shooting with a gun or a shotgun or something of the sort, you may go after one deer and say you miss, whatever happens, you actually get that deer and you kind of got to stay seated. That's usually going to scare away a lot of the deer in the area. However, with a bow, I can shoot one over here and say I miss. I can wait literally 10 minutes and some other deer might step out because they didn't hear a gunshot. Now, another plus is going to be cost effectiveness. When it comes down to comparing a bow versus a rifle, usually bows are going to be cheaper in the long run, especially the fact that you can get a good quality bow setup to where you can take down a deer or something of the sort for relatively inexpensive. I say relatively inexpensive, I mean like $300-400, and it'll come together as a kit. Now, you're going to want to upgrade a few things, sure, and then the arrows are going to have their own cost within itself, but you can practice with six arrows and that bow. So for under $500, you can be going out and doing what you need to do, practicing and hunting, versus having a gun where you're going to want to spend a few $100s for the rifle, a few $100s for the scope, and then all the ammunition costs just to get that thing sighted in to the point where then you want to go out and do it. So in my opinion, the cost effectiveness is definitely there if you want to use archery as well. And finally, I view this as a pro, but some could view it as a con. It takes more skill. It actually, for me, it means earning your kill. Nothing says hunting and being, like ancient man, like actually getting up close to your prey and shooting it with a bow and arrow. I mean, we've been doing that for literally thousands of years, and by doing so, it kind of makes you feel like you're, kind of getting back with your roots a little bit, and that's why I kind of like it. All right, now the main con of using a bow to hunt is going to be one of the things I listed as a pro, and it's going to be the skill involved. Whenever you're using a rifle, you can basically, for the average person, most likely have them shoot for about, 2-3 days. And they can get the hang of it to the point where they can feel confident enough to take some form of game without too much practice. But when it comes down to using a bow, you need much more skill in order to hit that zone that you want to hit. So we're going to say deer hunting. Well, if you've ever hunted deer before, you know you have an area about this big that you're going to want to hit between lungs, liver, and heart. You obviously don't want to do a gut shot, and you don't want to hit the shoulder blades. So you're going to want to hit in this little area right here. And if you are not confident enough to do that, then you need to make sure you keep on practicing. When it comes to using a gun or having a scope, then yeah, it's going to be a huge advantage to be able to look through that scope, especially if it's sighted in correctly, and all you really got to do is squeeze the trigger properly and breathe right, and you're going to basically hit where you need to within a certain distance. But when it comes down to a bow, even experienced hunters can get things like buck fever and get that shake going on to where they might miss. Now another con is going to be range. Now I've taken deer at about 200, 250 yards before. Not really that big of a deal. Yes, it's going to involve some some skill on that shot, but it's nothing too serious. But whenever using a bow, I refuse to take a shot past about 40 yards. Mainly because I want to be ethical when I hunt, and I don't want to take a chance of hitting a bad spot or getting a gut shot and having to chase that deer down for 2 miles, or it getting away and I can't find it, because those things can go for like miles with a gut shot. So I want to make sure I'm very confident what I'm hitting, and I really don't want to take a shot past 40 yards. However, if you've ever gone hunting before, especially deer, they're more likely to smell you whenever you get that close. So if you're 40 yards away, if you're not high up in a tree, and you make sure that you're washing away your scent with the soaps, and I like to stand in front of a burning fire, that way I can get smoke all over me, then you're going to get spotted by smell, because deer's vision is kind of one thing, but their smell is outstanding, and when you have to get them in that close, they're more likely going to smell you. So that is a main drawback when it comes down to using a bow. Now when it comes down to recreational use, yes, I like to recreationally shoot guns. It's probably one of my favorite things in the entire world. But the way the country is these days, is getting very hard to find ammunition. So being able to do something, being able to kind of scratch that itch of wanting to go out and shoot something without spending any money on ammunition is outstanding. So being able to do something like archery pays for itself. One of the big pluses if you are in a neighborhood, or say suburbia or within city limits. Now I know if you go in most city limits in the United States of America, if you discharge a firearm, the police are going to come knocking at your door. But guess what? If you have a bow, you can sit outside the backyard, set up a target like I have over there, and you can shoot all day, and no one's going to say anything because you don't really hear it, and it's a bow and arrow. You can literally shoot all day. You won't spend any money on ammunition unless you break an arrow, and you can get your, you can scratch that itch. You can kind of get whatever you need to get done, get better at it, practice your skill, and not really spend any money. All right, so let's talk about tools. The tools you're going to need to get started. If you want to do something like a compound bow, then you're going to want to get a good quality brand. Now, you don't have to go hardcore expensive and get the higher end brands to be able to go hunting. This is a Bear Attitude. I've had this thing since like 2015. It's intermediate, beginner to intermediate compound bow, but it does everything I needed it to do. Good brands like this are going to be Bear, PSE, those kind of things. And I highly suggest, if you would like to learn how to do any kind of archery and you want to get started with compound bow, you go to your local sporting goods store like a Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops, Sportsman's Warehouse, something of the sort, and just talk to the archery center, and they'll get you set up to where you need to be, to be where you need to be, I guess. But yeah, whenever you get your bow, especially if you're going to get a compound, it's most likely going to come in some form of a kit if you go the lower end. Or I don't say the lower end because that sounds kind of bad, but if you go like the beginner to intermediate level. So you're going to get your, your regular bow. This all came together as a kit. Quiver, bow, your sight, your arrow rest or whisker biscuit, stabilizer, that kind of stuff. It's all going to come together. The only thing you really have to pay for extra is going to be your arrows and your release. Now, whenever you're shooting with a compound bow, it's most likely going to be pretty heavy. So you're not going to want to pull back with your fingers. You're going to want to get a release. Now, this goes onto your hand like this. You're going to cinch it down and grab hold with little pinchers. And that's how you pull back. Whenever you're ready to fire, you let go of the trigger and it's going to shoot. Whenever you're using a compound bow, like I said earlier, one of the greatest parts of having a compound bow is you're able to pull back, and it's going to be heavy, 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 and then it's going to let off. The purpose of that is so you can sit back and hold that shot while you're waiting for whatever deer, turkey, or whatever to step out. Because most likely, if you're like me, you're going to be waiting, you're going to see the head, or you're going to hear something, and you're going to already be at a draw, waiting for that deer to step out. That way, when it does step out, however many minutes later, 2, 3, 4, I've literally been sitting here like this to where my shoulders were burning, and then I was able to, bam, get the shot off. You can't do that with a regular traditional bow because as you pull back, it gets just harder, 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 harder. Versus a compound bow, where you pull, 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 hard, 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 it lets off. And you can sit there for a little while. Now, when it comes down to your draw length and your draw weight, what that essentially means is draw length is going to be how far your arm has to travel till you get to the point where you're aiming. With a compound bow, it's going to be different than with a regular traditional bow. For me, since I'm 6'4", my draw length is about 31.5 inches. That's the best part about these compound bows, these lower end ones from say Bear or PSE. You can adjust all this stuff. You know, wherever you buy the bow from, they'll be able to adjust it to where it fits you. So my draw length is a little bit long. I'm at 31.5 inches, so I'm sitting way far back there. And then you have things like draw weight. Personally, for me, I won't go hunting with anything lower than 45 pounds. 45 pounds is kind of the bare minimum of what I'm willing to take something with, unless it's small game. Small game, I mean, you can go 25 pounds, no big deal. But if I'm hunting, you know, medium to large game, I'm going to want at least 45 pounds for medium game. And say I'm hunting bear, elk, or something, I'm going to want like 75 pounds, maybe 80 pounds. Realistically, what that means, that is your draw weight. What that means is how hard it is to pull back. Higher the draw weight, usually the faster that arrows are going to go, and a little bit more power is going to go with it. So if you're shooting a heavier grain arrow, then you're going to want to have more draw weight. That way you can shoot it much faster, kind of get that punch, and that's what's going to be using. That's what you're going to be using to knock down whatever you may be hunting. Now, just remember, whenever you are hunting, it all depends on the type of arrowhead you're going to use. I'll get into that in a second. Now, the next type of bow is going to be your traditional bow. This is going to encompass basically your long bows, like an English longbow, or a recurve style bow like this one. This is like a Hungarian style. I got this recently, like 2 weeks ago, from Amazon. I'm going to be completely 100% honest with y'all. I'm pretty comfortable shooting a compound bow because I've been doing it for years. But when it comes down to traditional bows, I've literally only been doing it for a few weeks. So when it comes down to how I aim, all that stuff, it's still very new to me. And what I've been doing for the last couple weeks since I've had it, literally like every single day, I've been practicing for like an hour, 2 hours until my hands start to blister and I can't really feel what I'm doing anymore. I know you can get the gloves, but I'm stubborn and I like to try to do things with my feel. So I've been trying to go that way. This thing right here, I got, like I said, I got off Amazon for like 120 bucks. This is a Chinese model because, let's be honest here, I've talked to a lot of people, I went on the forums and all kinds of stuff, and you really can't beat the traditional bows coming out of China right now, especially the recurves. Now, I didn't need anything special. This thing does not have any kind of arrow notch, no part to rest. It's not a takedown, so I don't have the bolts or anything to take this thing down. This is literally one of the most bare bones bows out there, and I wanted that. I wanted to kind of go back to like nothing, to the point where I can get really good at what I'm doing, and the arrow rests right here. So when it comes down to it, I'm practicing it. I'm still getting good at this. I will not say I'm an expert at it. I will not even say I'm good at it, because as you'll see in a little bit, I still miss the target when I'm using this thing, because aiming it is still pretty difficult to me. But this is a 28, it's 45 pounds at 28 inches. The thing is, once you get past 28 inches, it starts to stack hardcore. What I mean by stack is it starts to go from like 45 pounds, like 55 pounds, like really hard as you're getting past there. So for me, since I have a 31.5 inch draw on the compound, I have about 30 inch draw on this thing. So when I come back here, it starts to really get hard right back here. And that's where all the skill that I'm trying to develop, that muscle memory, is kind of coming into play. So I like the challenge. I'm kind of one of the obsessive people anyway, so that's why I wanted to get with this. Now, one of the pluses of having these little beginner bows is they already come with the arrows, so they're literally for like 129 bucks. It came with this, a little arrow pad, and 3 arrows, 3 wooden arrows with little cast iron tips for $129. So I've been literally sitting out here for hours a day practicing with $129 worth of whatever. So when it comes down to the difference between the two, the traditional bow, if you want to get a starter one, it's much cheaper than a compound. But the compound, like I said, is a little bit more accurate. There's a few more doodads and gadgets on there, so you kind of know where that arrow is going to be going. And finally, when it comes down to different tips for your arrows, you got different types that you can get. For me, I really only use 2 different types. I use this kind. It's a practice tip. Camera is really not focusing on it. And then a broadhead. The entire purpose of the broadhead is these things are razor sharp. And when they hit the deer, they induce massive hemorrhaging. So you're really going to get a good blood trail. So when you do hit whatever in that little box I was telling you about, they usually don't make it too far because you've probably punctured the lungs or the liver. And there's going to be a very good blood trail that you're going to basically follow all the way to the deer. All right, so there you have it. That is basically my introduction to using a bow, to archery, that kind of thing, why you would maybe want to start it. I hope if you are interested in this hobby that you go ahead and get started, because like I said from the beginning, you don't have to be a prepper to be super into archery. There's a lot of archers out there that have no inclination to be prepared, but by doing so, you are preparing yourself because, hey, if you can shoot and, you know, get really good with a bow, you're more likely going to be able to source wild game, that kind of stuff, if there ever is a situation. So that's why I wanted to put this on this video. Now, one thing that you're going to notice is I did not talk at all about crossbows. There's a reason for that. I'm a firm believer of don't talk about something if you've never messed with it before. And I've never ever shot a crossbow before, so that's why I'm not talking about it here. So if you are one of those people that likes crossbows, you have a really good setup, go ahead and put it down in the comment section below. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that would love to read about it. I would like to read about it, especially if you have a really good experience with crossbows. That's just something I've never done before, and I don't think it's fair to try to pass off knowledge to my audience that I've never actually done before. So that's not something I'm going to do. That's not something I'm about. So that's why I didn't talk about anything crossbow in here. But these kind of setups really aren't that bad, and there's basically a setup for any kind of budget. So if you really wanted to get started into this, you don't have to spend a lot of money. Like I said, my traditional bow cost me $129, and I've been literally sitting out here for weeks just shooting away. Really not that bad. Sure, I'm going to upgrade a few things like the arrows. I'm going to get a better arrow glove, but aside from that, it really didn't cost me that much money, and it's really fun. I really enjoy doing it, so it's something I'm very excited about getting into. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. If you learned something, please do me a humongous favor and give me a thumbs up. It really does help me out. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I'll catch you on the next one, okay? Bye. My name's Anthony. On today's video, we will be doing another episode of Hobbies to get you better prepared. This one's going to be on missing the target completely. Bullseye. Perfect. To the left.